This week we'll be doing Luke 19, verses 1 through 10. And I kind of labeled it When You Start to Grumble. And that's the name of the Bible study. But I kind of got this Bible study lesson from this worship service that I go to called The Living Room, where they... I don't know, it can be like a worship service and everything like that, but they lead a sermon every week, except this past week I went and they invited like a couple of people to come on stage, and it was like a note to self, things that they wish that their college selves knew. And there was one story in particular that this guy shared, and he changed the whole perspective of it, and it is Luke 19. So I'm going to go ahead and read for us 19 verse 1. He entered Jericho and was passing through. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was not able because of the crowd, since he was a short man. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, because today it is necessary for me to stay at your house." So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. All who saw it began to complain, "He's gone to stay with a sinful man." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor, Lord, and if I have extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much." "Today salvation has come to this house," Jesus told him, "because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost." And just kind of like a little bit about Zacchaeus, tax collectors, okay? If you've ever studied them before, they don't have a really good rep, which is ironic because his name actually means pure and clean. But sometimes in our own lives, it can feel kind of ironic as believers, depending on what we're doing, going about our days and things like that. We're told to follow Jesus, and Jesus is good, yet so many bad and challenging things happen to us, and sometimes it can feel like, what's the point in all of this? And our attitudes can shift depending on what season of lives we are in. So besides the fact Jesus is worth every minute of our time, I truly do believe that he doesn't give up on us. He actively seeks us out, and he will always choose us over and over again. And I kind of broke up just a few. There's so many lessons you could honestly get from just the 10 verses. But the first one is he doesn't give up on you, and no one is beyond saving. And like I said, we're told that he is a tax collector. And we've talked about that before. Everyone hated them. They were the lowest of the low because they would steal money from their own people, and everyone knew it was happening, but there was nothing they could do about it. They had a wide authority to prosecute those who did not pay, and were also able to increase their fees beyond what was actually required. It's kind of like if I told Cara, "Hey, can you get $10 from Jackson?" And you go up to Jackson's like, "Nicole wants 15, and then you keep 5 of it. That's what these tax collectors were doing. And as long as they sent the appropriate amount back to Rome, no one knew, except everyone did. So the fact that he was also a Jew makes it an even bigger betrayal. He was stealing from his own people, and Jesus still said, "I want him." And the second part is to do whatever it takes to get to Jesus, because he is actively seeking you out. And I'll explain some of the context in this. So Jewish men didn't run, and they definitely don't climb trees. It seems very undignified, and climbing the tree would expose them to those who passed beneath them. So back in that day, you did not see a Jewish man running, and definitely not climbing a tree. So these actions back then, they were considered shameful and beneath a respectful member of the community. But Zacchaeus had heard that Jesus was coming, and he ran ahead of everyone to climb the tree just to get a glimpse of Jesus. He had no idea he would even be having a conversation with Jesus. He did what he thought was necessary to get to God, regardless of what others thought. Zacchaeus had proven that he was ready to hear Jesus through his actions over and over again. I don't know if y'all have ever seen The Chosen, like during season 1. There's different scenes where this man is actually just taking a glimpse of Jesus, trying every bit of his way just to get a glimpse of this man and to hear a little bit of what he was saying. And through that, Jesus could tell that he was proving himself that he wanted to hear him more and more. And during this part where he climbs up the tree, it's midday. So he had to have left his own taxing table to see this man that he had never met. He broke every social norm to get close to Jesus, while we ourselves have a fear of just simply standing out half the time. I definitely don't like standing out. You will find me on the back of every pew in church, every party. I try and be the furthest away, or off to the side on a dance floor. Like, I'll dance, but like I don't want to be in the middle. But then when Jesus spoke to Zacchaeus, he responded immediately. We are told in verse 4 that Jesus also was just simply passing through. And then in verse 5, Jesus states it's absolutely necessary to stay at Zacchaeus' house. Jesus will do anything to get to you. Once he sees your willingness to grow closer and to walk with him, he will do the same for you. Jesus loves everyone and wants everyone to love him. But we've also discussed that he's a gentleman, and he has to be let in. He's not going to ever just barge into someone's life. There's going to be small introductions for them to really get to know him, and then they have to ultimately let him in. Sometimes people feel Jesus isn't actively searching for them or wanting them. And I actually had a few conversations about this with my patients today because they kept asking. But he proves us wrong in this passage. Jesus not only immediately looked up into that tree, but he also called Zacchaeus out by his name, almost as if he has been looking for him on purpose. He never once started to search around for this man. He immediately knew where he was at, and it was on the limb in the tree. And then the third part of this, he chose you and he would do it again and again. This is the first part of what I want you to really pay attention to. So after meeting Zacchaeus, Jesus told him he was the son of Abraham and that his faith had saved him. Jesus knew the desires of his heart and knew he wanted to change, and he would change. And I want us to turn our attention to the response of the crowd, because this is where the note to self person began to change our views. They looked down on Jesus because he had chosen to eat with someone they thought was a sinner. They looked down at the man they originally sought out, talking about Jesus, that he had a whole crowd around him, and this crowd immediately was like, immediately were judging him for who he chose to sit with. And they looked down on their Lord and Savior. They looked down on Zacchaeus because they thought that he was beyond saving. Zacchaeus had made his choices and turned his back on his own people, and they refused to see the change. They refused to see the good and to try to reach out to him themselves. How many times have we been in a very rough season where I promise you our character probably did not reflect one of a Christian or godlike or anything like that? Everyone has had that season. And then to have yourself try and start your journey back with God, walking close to God and doing all these things, and your friends just don't see it. They're like, no, we see this person, not this one. It can be devastating and frustrating. But Jesus broke through both of those barriers multiple times in the Bible. He confronted people's preconceptions about sinners by saying that they were the very people he came to save and minister to. No one was too good to listen to the words of Jesus. And this is the second part. This same passage, like I said, it was taught last week when I was listening to it. And there was one statement that this man said, and the whole room got quiet. And it said, people will decide who God is based on the way you treat them. That crowd showed Zacchaeus that he would never be loved accepted or wanted, that he will always be defined by his sins and mistakes. And Jesus looked through the crowd and still said Zacchaeus' name, and he still said, "Come, I want you." We tend to always want to see ourselves as the good guys in these stories in the Bible, the ones that are needing Jesus, the ones going through the rough season. And granted, we are going through a rough season sometimes. We are going through this or that, and we can relate to a lot of these characters. But we very few times see ourselves as like this bad guy. But if I can tell you something, most of us here already have Jesus, or we're seeking them out. We're just learning and wanting to grow in our faith. The people who really need him are the ones who probably aren't here. They are your classmates, your neighbors, your friends, family, coworkers. Sometimes we're the crowd, though, and we have to realize that. This crowd grumbled and complained when Jesus called Zacchaeus out. How many times do we do that about our circumstances, our challenges, our problems, and what's going on in our lives? Complaining isn't bad. That is not what I'm saying, because I 100% will have a rant session a couple times a week. But we need to pay attention as to who is listening. We need to pay attention as to how we're handling that circumstance. We need to not just make it a list of rants, complaints, or these inconveniences, but we need to also be discussing the good. And a lot of times when we start on that downward spiral of all these negatives that are going on in our day or the week or whatever, we tend to forget about all that good stuff that had been happening, or all the good stuff that's kind of intertwined into what's going on. We don't want to hide the good, and we don't want to hide the bad as Christians. We don't. Jesus, he's in both. He's in both. He walks with you through both of these things, good, bad. This crowd was in the way of Zacchaeus seeing and meeting Jesus. They were so much in the way that he had to try and find a different route as to how to see Jesus. And when this speaker was talking, he said, I had an amazing support group in college. I had people that really encouraged me and poured into me, and I did the same to them. But those people that I talked about at the beginning, which he was talking about the people he lived on a hall with when he lived in the dorms, and he was like, this one did this drug, this one was out doing this. Like, he knew their behaviors, but very rarely could mention their names. He said those were the people I should have been talking to, yet I avoided. I just made myself busy with church. I had to go to the Bible study. Well, guess what? I could have brought the Bible study to them. There were different things that I could have done to bring Jesus to them, and that was probably one of my biggest regrets, because I never once looked in their direction. I just avoided them because I didn't want to be associated with those behaviors. And Jesus in the Bible, he went in areas no one would have ever imagined him going, just to find that one person. And I think that's how we should be more often. And so to bring it all together, sometimes, yes, we are Zacchaeus. We are. And we're the ones in need of Jesus. I think we're always in need of Jesus. However, it's also important we don't block someone's view of seeing him for themselves. Okay? And I'm going to say this again. People decide who God is based on the way you treat them. And this phrase for a week I've been having on repeat in my head. And it has definitely, granted, there are still times where you don't want to be looking at my actions, 100%. But within a few minutes of those actions, I'm immediately going, oh man, I gotta fix this. But it's also a phrase that has definitely driven me this past week in how I talk to people and how I treat people. And this is also not me bragging at all. This is just like a little thing. My patient, I didn't realize how closely they were paying attention to my behavior today at all. The day was overwhelming. The last thing on my mind was really how people were portraying me, because I was just trying to get things done. And it was towards the end of the day, I felt like a crappy nurse, because I barely had any conversation really with my patients, trying to really get to know them, because the day had been so busy. And all I'm doing is cleaning up the rooms now and getting ready for shift change. And my patient grabbed me by my arm, and I'm thinking something's wrong. I'm like, what's wrong? Are you okay? She goes, yes, hun. I need to tell you something. And I was like, what? She goes, you're a really kind person. And I just froze, and I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, I can tell. I know you haven't been in the room much, but you need to take a breath. You're okay. You're just really kind, and I need you to know that. And like I said, that was not in any way what I thought I was portraying. I thought I was portraying a horrible nurse that didn't really have time for her patients. And sometimes people are able to see through kind of like that chaotic mess that you have going on. But sometimes not so much. And we have to be careful about what we're doing with our actions and the things we're saying and things like that. But when I say, like, people decide who God is, it's not based on Him. Sometimes it's not based on His word, because it's hard to put these words into real life sometimes. It really is, especially for non-believers. And it's not your friends, it's not your neighbor, it's not your preacher, it's you. You are the true reflection. And a question I want to leave you guys with is, what does your life say about who God is? And Jesus reiterated the purpose for His ministry at the end of this little 10-verse thing. He said, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. And we should remember that in our own personal ministry for God, and have that as our guiding goal for fulfilling the Great Commission of God and leading others to Christ. And that is all I have for you lovely humans. And I appreciate you guys coming and participating on this wonderful, is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Hey, what's up, Haley? Okay, how was y'all's honeymoon?
I know. I'm glad, Nicole. I'm glad you asked, because I was.
The elephant in the room.
Yes, yes.
It was amazing. It was the best week ever. I want to live in a bungalow in Mexico forever.
Well, it looked like y'all were having the time of your lives. I was a little jealous. I was like, dang, that's so nice. As I was taking on an extra shift, I was like, why? Why?
It was so nice. I haven't had a full week off work ever, like since I started working. And so that alone was the highlight.
I'm so happy for y'all. It literally looked gorgeous, everything. So
I think it was supposed to rain like all day Thursday and Friday, and I mean it didn't rain a lick all week, so
see,
that was very nice.
Also, Haley, remember your prayer request a couple weeks ago when you said for the weather for your wedding?
Yeah, that worked out.
There was no rain.
Literally all weekend too. It was like, I think Friday it was supposed to pour all day and night, and I think it rained like that afternoon, and then literally stopped for the reversal, and then didn't rain again until probably